Masechet Baba Batra Daf Kof Yod. We got into a discussion about the word she'ero, which the Midrash says refers to a father, and we said, why not a mother? And that went into a discussion about whether matrilineal descent is considered halachically significant. That discussion led us to this pasuk about Yehonatan ben Gershom ben Menashe. He was serving as a Kohen in the idolatrous temple of Micha. Now, Yehonatan, who was he? What was his real genealogy? In fact, he was the son of Gershom, the son of Moshe Rabbeinu, and he went off the path. This Midrash says because Moshe himself married into an idolatrous family of Yitro. Now, if he was the grandchild of Moshe, why say Menashe? Because this is not a genealogy of his actual family, but rather of his character. And just like Menashe, the evil king of Judea, he was from the tribe of Yehuda. Just like he worshipped idols, so too we attribute Yonatan, we associate him with Menashe. Also, the pasuk earlier says he was from Mishpachat Yehuda. He was not actually from the tribe of Yehuda. He was from the tribe of Levi. Nevertheless, this is the way of Pesukim to sometimes connect someone and say that they are related to someone else, not because they are related to them by blood, but rather they are related in their actions. All right, so that was one important lesson. And then Rabbi Elazar said one should actually marry into a family that has good traits, because one's children will be affected by the family that they marry into. And we saw the examples of Pinchas versus Yehonatan. And so that brings us to this next point. Amar Rava, Hanose isha sarich sheivdok be'acheha, shenemar, v'ikach Aaron et Elisheva בת עמינדב אחות נחשון. ממשמע שנאמר בת עמינדב, איני יודע שאחות נחשון היא, מה תלמוד לומר אחות נחשון? מכאן שנושא אישה צריך שיבדוק באחיה. Rava says, when someone wants to marry a woman, he should check her brothers and to see if they are high quality people. How do you know that? Because the pasuk says that Aharon married Elisheva, the daughter of Aminadav, who was also, Elisheva was also the brother of Nachshon. Now, once I know that Elisheva is the daughter of Aminadav, doesn't that mean it's obvious that she is the sister of Nachshon? We know Nachshon ben Aminadav, so we know who he is. Why do you have to tell us both her father's name and her brother's name? I can figure out her brother's name myself. So why say that she's the brother of Nachshon? We learn from here that when one is dating, one should check out the brothers of the woman that he's going to marry, because that person will have an effect on the rest of the family. Tana Robanim Domin Lacheha Ha'em, as this Baraita teaches that most sons resemble the mother's brothers. Sometimes they actually look alike. They look similar to their uncles, these kids, but more importantly here is that their character traits will be similar. And so if you want to make sure that your children will be righteous, make sure that your future brother-in-laws are themselves righteous. Now we go back to the story of Yehonatan, that priest in Micha's temple, who was from the tribe of Levi. He's also associated with Yehuda. He's also called the grandson of Menashe, although that Nun was suspended, and so in fact he is the biological grandson of Moshe, according to this understanding that we've been reading so far. So one day, some people come to this place and they meet this priest of Micha and they ask him some questions. And here's how the pasuk describes their questions. Vayasuru shama vayomer mi aviacha halom uma ata oseh bazeh uma lecha fo. So a simple reading, they're asking simple questions. So some men came by that temple of Micha, and they found Yonatan, and they asked him, who brought you here? How did you get here? And what are you doing in this place? And what do you have here? What is this place? They want to find out, right? What is the nature of this here temple, and how did he get involved in it? So now we're going to read into their question some deeper meaning. Amrullah, Labi Moshe ka'ati tichti be al tikrab halom. Labi Moshe ka'ati tichti בה, מה זה בידיך? למה משה קראתי תכתיב בה, ואתה פה עמוד עמדי, תעשה קומה לעבודה זרה? So according to this midrash, these men knew exactly what was going on here, and they knew this was a temple for avodah zarah, and they knew that this guy Yohanatan was a grandson of Moshe, and in fact they are challenging him. They're not just asking him questions because they're curious, and they say, aren't you from the lineage of Moshe? And it says about Moshe, do not come too close to the burning bush. And about you, so that's the word halom, that they ask him, who brought you halom, who brought you here to this place of avodah zarah? You, who are the grandson of Moshe, who was at the burning bush, and got a high level of prophecy there. And the prophecy said, do not come too close to this holy place. Your grandfather was the holiest, and was able to come to that holy place, and you come here to the place of avodah zarah. And the second question, aren't you a descendant of Moshe? It says regarding Moshe, what is this? Mazeh biyadecha. It's the staff that he was holding. That's what Zeh refers to. And so when they ask him, ma ata oseh bazeh, what are you doing with this? So the word Zeh is a hint back to Moshe. Moshe came and used the staff to do miracles to save the Jewish people. You, what are you doing bazeh over here with this avodah zarah? And third question, aren't you a descendant of Moshe? Where it says, Ata po amod imadi. Hashem says, you here, come stand here with me. Moshe is on the highest level that he can stand next to Hashem and receive the highest prophecy. And how about you? What does it say about you? Malecha po. You are here in a place of avodah zarah, the exact opposite, right? Aren't you ashamed to be the grandson of Moshe, and instead of being close to Hashem, you're making yourself close to avodah zarah? Have you become a priest for avodah zarah? That's their question. Right, how could you do this? And he has an answer. Amar lehen, kach mekublanim bet abi abba, leolam yaskir adam asmo la'avodah zarah, v'al yistarech labiriyot. So Yonatan, this idolatrous Kohen, says, I have a tradition from my father's house. I guess that would be Moshe himself. That a person, this is a Torah Sheba'al Peh that he received, a person should hire himself out to avodah zarah and not take charity from others. Now the point of this tradition, which is a true tradition, is that you should try not to take charity. Taking charity from the community is a terrible thing. Better, anything is better than that. So as an extreme example, better to go work for avodah zarah than to take money from charity. Now, he misinterpreted this statement. He took it literally, like it's actually better to go and be a priest and worship avodah zarah and help other people worship avodah zarah rather than take charity. But that's not what it means. Velahi el avodah zarah, avodah shezarah lo. Avodah zarah doesn't mean idolatrous worship or foreign worship of God. That's not what they meant, but rather worship that is foreign to this particular person. If a person is used to a certain job, he's a doctor, he's a lawyer, and he can't find any work as a doctor and a lawyer, so what should he do? Should he go take charity now? No, he should not do that. Rather, he should go get another job, even if it's a more menial job. Oh, I used to be an important doctor, now I have to be a cab driver. Okay, well, that's the breaks. So be a cab driver and don't take charity. Kedamar Rav Kahana, netosh nebelta beshuka ushkol agra, velatema gabra rabba ana vezila bi milta. As Rav said to Rav Kahana, you should skin a carcass in the marketplace and take payment for that, and not say, oh, I'm such a great man, and this is beneath me to do such a thing. Right? Could be that you are a great man and you're used to having a high level and very honorable job, but if it doesn't work out and that you get fired from that job, so rather than take charity, it means go be a butcher, go be a plumber, whatever you need to do in order to make a living is better. So that's what it means, avodah zarah, work that is foreign to a person, not actually go and do idolatry. So that was anyway the justification that Yonatan thought to himself. He says, well, I don't have any other jobs, so well, this is better than taking charity. But he interpreted that tradition in the wrong way. כיוון שראה דוד שממון חביב עליו ביותר, מינו על האוסרות. So now, some time later, so you have to jump for a while to get from the period of the Shoftim down to David. But anyway, King David saw him, Yonatan, and saw that he loves money. You see how he would go and be a priest for Avodah Zarah just to make some money. And so he said, well, since you're so ambitious and care about money so much, I will appoint you to be in charge of the king's treasury, of the treasury of the temple. Shenemar, Ushboel ben Gershom ben Menashe, Nagid Allah Osarot, as a pasuk in Divrei Yamim says, that Shevuel, the son of Gershom, the son of Menashe, well, that's the same lineage as Yehonatan, is also ben Gershom ben Menashe. And here his name is Shevuel, but since he has the same parent and grandparent, must be the same person, and he was appointed to be the ruler over the treasuries. So you care about money so much, you must think about it, so you must be good at accounting, and therefore King David makes him the treasurer. Now, was his name Shevuel? His name was Yonatan. So how come this pasuk calls him Shevuel? Rabbi Yochanan explains that this is a nickname, a symbolic name, that he returned to God with all of his heart. It's a beautiful name, Shav-El. He returns to God. He made full teshubah. In fact, yes, he did do Avodah Zarah before. He was in some financial straits. He misinterpreted the tradition. He made a mistake. And now that he had this opportunity, that King David hired him to be the treasurer over the temple, he fully renounced all that idolatry, and he went to a good path. Okay, back to the Mishnah. Habanim et ha'av. The Mishnah says that sons inherit the father. Okay, we already dealt with the other way. We found two sources that fathers inherit from a son. But now, in the normal way of the world, if a father dies first, the son inherits minalan. How do you know? Tichtib ish ki yamut v'chule uben en lo. Okay, this seems obvious from the pasuk. It says if a person dies and he has no son, then the inheritance goes to the daughter. So we can infer from this ta'ama de en lo ben hayesh lo ben ben kodem. The only reason it goes to the daughter is because he has no son. But if he did have a son, then the son would go first. So the son is actually the first in line to receive an inheritance. That seems like a good proof. Amar le Rav Papa le Abaye, Ema, Ika ben lerut ben, Ika bat terut bat, Ika ben ubat lahai lerut velahai lerut. So now Rav Papa asks Abaye, tells Abaye, why don't we interpret the Pesukim a little bit differently? Not that it goes to a son first, and then if there's no son, then it goes to a daughter, because it doesn't actually say that the son inherits first. It could be that we should interpret the Pesukim this way. If there is a son only, then, and there's no daughter, then the son inherits. And if there's no son, but rather only a daughter, that's what the pasuk talks about, then the daughter will inherit. But if there is a son and a daughter, or sons and daughters, then neither the sons nor the daughters will inherit. Since the pasuk only talked about one case. If there's no son, a daughter inherits. Maybe we can infer from that, if there's no daughter, a son inherits. But maybe it's only one or the other. But if there's both, then neither inherit. Now, we have to explain what this question means. Like, what does he mean by that? Well, who else is going to inherit? Velaman lerut, atu bar kasha demata lerut. So then, well, who should inherit? If it's not the son and not the daughter, well, you want the governor of the city to come and inherit, and he should take it? So if someone dies with many children, sons and daughters, then it goes to some stranger? Like, what does that mean? Why would you think, if there's only a son, the son gets it. If there's only a daughter gets it. If there's sons and daughters, someone else gets it? That makes no sense. What kind of question is this? Hachi kamina. Rav Papa explains. This is what I meant to ask. Ika ben ubat la hai lerut kule vela hai lerut kule ela ki hadade lertu. My question is, if there is a son and a daughter, maybe we don't give it all to the son, nor do we give it all to the daughter, but rather they should share. So Rav Papa is actually asking a very logical question. If there are many children, shouldn't all the children, sons and daughters, inherit from their father equally? Because after all, the pasuk doesn't say what happens if there are sons and daughters. It only says if there's no son, then the daughter gets everything. Okay, and if there's no daughter, well, I can infer that the son gets everything. But maybe if there are sons and daughters, then they all share it equally. That's compatible with the Pisukim. Pisukim only say that if there's no son, the daughters get. So, but if there is a son, maybe the daughters also get, but not exclusively. If there's no son, then the daughter gets everything. If there is a son, then let's say there's one son and one daughter, let the son get half and the daughter get half. How do you know that daughters are only second in line after sons? If there's no sons, then the daughters get. But if there are sons, then the daughters get nothing. Okay, very important question. We're going to see a number of answers. Amar le Abaye, v'istirich kera lashmainan hechadelet le elachad bera l'tinuk lechulhu nichse. Abaye responds to Rapapa, and he says, does the pasuk need to come and teach us that when there is only one child, that one child will get the entire inheritance? Isn't that obvious? In other words, if it was true that sons and daughters all inherit, they all share everything equally, then why would they need a pasuk to say, oh, if there's no son, then the daughter gets everything? Well, that would be obvious. But you have to tell me that when there's 5 children, they split it 5 ways. When there's one child, then the one child gets everything. If sons and daughters are treated equally, you don't need the pasuk to say, if there's no sons, then it goes to the daughter. If they're all equal, then we would know that anyway. So it must be that the pasuk is saying, oh, if there's no sons, the daughter gets, because if there are sons, only the sons get, and only if there's no sons, then the daughters get. So the proof is actually from this very pasuk. But Papa has a response to that. Maybe this pasuk is in fact teaching us that daughters can inherit. And once I know that a daughter can inherit, she inherits even if there are sons. So the pasuk is saying, listen, if there are no sons, a daughter inherits. And you know why? Because daughters should always inherit. And if there is a son and a daughter, then they would both split it 50-50. If there's 2 sons and 2 daughters, they would all get a quarter. So maybe that's what we should learn from this pasuk. How do you know that this pasuk means that a daughter won't get if there is a son? And Abaye answers, and he says, no, I can learn that daughters in general can inherit. They are somewhere on the list from a pasuk later in Bemidbar. This is the second part of the Benos of Chad's story, where the tribe comes and complains, oh, if you give it to the daughters, they're going to marry out, and then we will lose part of the tribal inheritance. And so Moshe says, okay, you're right. From now on, here's the law. Every daughter who has an inheritance has to marry a man within the tribe so that the land will stay within the tribe. From that pasuk, I would know, since it says, or any daughter who inherits, now I know that daughters can inherit. They are somewhere on the list. So I know that already. I don't need another pasuk to tell me that daughters can inherit. So now when I come back to the pasuk and the earlier pasuk in Bemidbar, where it says, if there's no son, then a daughter inherits. So I learn only if there's no son, then a daughter inherits. But if there is a son, then the daughter does not inherit. So this is Abaye's answer. It's a good answer, and we're going to come back to it because it might be the only answer standing, because the next one is going to be refuted. Rav Acha bar Yaakov amar mehacha, lama yigara Shem Abinu mitoch mishpachto, ki en lo ben, tama de en lo ben, hayesh lo ben, ben kodem. Rav Acha bar Yaakov says we can learn it from the question that the daughters of Selofchad ask when they first come to Moshe. They say, why should the name of our father be erased from his family just because he has no son? Meaning, if he has no son and then he has no one to inherit, then he won't have a piece of land that's named after him, and his name will be forgotten. So that's what they ask. Now they say, ki en lo ben. His name would only be erased because he has no son. If he had a son, then the son would get everything. So here's a proof that if he has a son, then the son inherits, and the son inherits everything, and not the daughters. So isn't that a good proof that when there is a son, the daughters do not inherit, so that sons and daughters do not inherit equally? We answer that, V'dilma benot Selofchad hu dekamaran hachi, nitna Torah No, you can't have a derivation from the question of the daughters of Selofchad. Maybe they're the ones that said this, but maybe they were wrong in their assumption. Maybe they were assuming an ancient law from before the Torah was given, where only sons inherit. But then, once the Torah was given, so Moshe could have corrected them and said, oh, you think that only sons inherit? Not true. Sons and daughters inherit equally. So you cannot prove something from their question. You can only prove something from what Moshe taught, not from the question from the Benot Selofchad. Maybe they got the wrong law. So rather, this proof from Rav Acha Bar Yaakov does not stand. So we're going to go back to Abaye's proof, which is better. Ravina Amar Mehacha Hakarob Elav Hakarob Karob Kodem. Ravina says, I have another proof that sons inherit exclusively. When there are sons, then the daughters don't get anything. Only if there's no sons, then the daughters get, and they're not all equal. And I can prove it from here, from Hakarov Elav, at the end of that paragraph that we have analyzed in the previous two dapim, says the closest one to the deceased. So someone who's closer gets precedence in the inheritance. And the idea is that a son is closer than a daughter to the deceased. Now, why should that be so? So, in what way is a son closer to the father than a daughter? Are you going to tell me that? It's because a son can stand in the place of a father for designation of a Hebrew maidservant, that if the father buys an Amma Ivriya and he can marry her, or if he doesn't want to marry her, he can give her to his son. So the son can be a stand-in for the father. A daughter can't do that. And also for the law of ancestral field, if a father consecrates a field and a third party redeems it, that's it. It's lost. It doesn't go back to the family. But if the son redeems it, then it stays within the family. And that's true for a son and not a daughter. So here's two laws that apply only to a son and not a daughter. Is that why you're saying that a son is a closer relative, and therefore inherits exclusively? But that's not a good proof. Ya'ada bat lav bat ya'adahi. Regarding the designation, a daughter obviously cannot be designated to marry a maidservant. That doesn't work. They're both females, so they can't get married. Sedeh achuzah nameh mehai pircha gufahu tahakaimat le letana kelum yesh yibum ela b'mkom she'en ben ela machvarta kedeshaninan me'ikada. And if you want to prove it from the ancestral field, no, we can refute that also from itself, because we learned earlier that the law of the ancestral field, the fact that a son can take the place of a father and redeem a field and it also stays in the family, we only know that by a comparison to Yibum, because one time we asked back in Arachin, is it the brother? Can the brother redeem or the son redeem? And we learned it from the law of Yibum. If there is a son, you don't do Yibum. And so we learned from that a son is closer to the father than a brother. Well, since we learned that from Yibum, regarding Yibum, the law is the same for a son or a daughter. If the deceased has a son or a daughter, then the brother does not do Yibum. So you see, if you're going to learn that ancestral land shows that the son is closer to the father than the daughter, you cannot learn that, because the whole law of ancestral land is learned from Yibum. And regarding Yibum, a person having a son or a daughter equally means that the widow cannot do Yibum. And so neither of these are good proofs that a son takes precedence over a daughter, is a closer relative called Hakarov. A son is not more karov than a daughter. Rather, this is also rejected, Avina's answer, and we're going to go back to Abaye's proof is the best proof. Okay, but we have another possibility. The pasuk says that you will inherit, as talking about inheritance of slaves, and these you can bequeath to your sons after you. It says benechem, so we're interpreting that here to mean your male sons and not your daughters. And so you see that inheritance goes primarily to sons and not to daughters. Okay, now we ask about that. See, it's not always clear with benechem, does it mean sons specifically or all children? So far, we just assumed that it means sons here, but should we say that that's true everywhere? So are you going to say the same thing? This is the last pasuk in the second paragraph of Shema. Says, keep the mitzvot so that your days will be multiplied, and the days of your benechem. Are you going to tell me that this applies only to sons and not daughters? Right? Is the idea here that if you do mitzvot, then the days of your sons will be long on the land, and so only your sons will live long on the land, and your daughters will not? That doesn't make sense. That wouldn't be a blessing to a person. That do mitzvot so that your sons live long on the land, and daughters, they won't. That would not be a very good guarantee. Isn't it obvious that over here it means daughters also? And just like benotechem here in that pasuk in Devarim 11 means sons and daughters, so too back here should mean that you bequeath to your benechem means sons and daughters. And so this proof is refuted. But we answer, no, actually it's a good proof, because beracha shaneh, the pasuk in the Shema in Devarim 11 is a beracha. This is not about a law. It's saying keep the laws so that you and your children will live long on the land. You won't go into exile. You won't be have enemies come or a famine. You will live long and prosper in the land. When you're talking about a beracha, then surely the beracha is including all of your children, sons and daughters. You have to look at the context. But that does not mean that in this pasuk in Vayikra benechem has to mean sons and daughters. Here it's a legal context. So it's talking about that you're going to bequeath to your sons. So here it means sons specifically. And so this is where we learn that if there are sons, then the sons inherit solely. Only if there are no sons, then the daughters inherit. And so this is a second successful response to Rapapa's question. Rapapa's question was, maybe sons and daughters should inherit equally. And from these two proofs, we see, no, not true. If there are sons, then the daughters don't get anything, or they're second. Only if there are no sons, then the daughters can inherit. We now move to the next part of the Mishnah that says, V'achin min ha'av nochalin u'manchilin, paternal brothers both inherit from each other and bequeath to each other. V'chule min elan. What's the source that paternal brothers can inherit? Amar Rabba, Acha achava mi bnei Yaakov. Ma lalan min ha'av ve'lo min ha'em, afkan min ha'av ve'lo min ha'em. We learn it from the word achva, which is said, meaning achim. It's said by the sons of Yaakov when they present themselves to Yosef. They say, achim anachnu, we are brothers. Now, they are only paternal brothers. They have 4 different mothers. And so, but yet they are called achim. And so, too, in our passage that says that brothers can inherit and uses the same word achim, achva, it must mean paternal brothers and not maternal brothers. Velamali, mimishpachto v'yarash ota ketiv, mishpachat av kiruya mishpacha, mishpachat em ena kiruya mishpacha. And now we ask, why do we need Rabba's gezerah shava that comes from Bereshit over here in Bemidbar? We can learn it in a much more simple way, just from the Bemidbar section, because the last pasuk there says, from his family, someone from his family, She'ero, Karov Elav, Mimishpachto, will inherit. So Mishpacha, we already proved on a previous daf, that mishpacha means a paternal family is called family, whereas the maternal lineage is not significant in terms of Jewish law to be called family. And therefore, since says mishpacha here, so then I know that when it says brothers in this same paragraph, it's referring to paternal brothers and not maternal brothers. In hachinameh. And we say, you're right, it's we could learn it sufficiently from this pasuk. And when Rabbah said his statement that the word Achim bar Yaakov and the word Achim somewhere else means paternal brothers, he actually didn't say this statement in this context of inheritance, but rather he stated this derivation regarding Yibum, that if someone dies without children, then his wife can do Yibum, must do Yibum, or Chalitza. If she does Yibum, it can only be with her husband's paternal brother, not with if the husband has a half brother with the same mother. That brother, that maternal half brother, cannot do yibum. Only either a full brother or a half brother with the same father. Baruch Adonai Le'olam. Amen ve'amen.